Let's deconstruct the cultural hegemony of the ruling class and talk about some of these myths that uphold the power of the ultra wealthy. So, rich people create jobs, so we should all be grateful to rich people.
Rich people don't create jobs. Rich people, i.e. wealthy people, own all the stuff that we need to survive, because over several hundred years, they have enclosed all of the resources that we need to survive. And then they use that power over everyone else's survival to force people to work for them for less than what they deserve. And the only option you have is work or die, basically. The way that we got to that point was through basically dispossession.
You want to just briefly touch on the history of enclosure? I mean, that's a big one.
This is what Marx and Marxists call primitive accumulation. It's a very important understanding of the way that capitalism developed, right? Because the liberal story of how capitalism developed was that we were all, in our little huts, and one person decided that they would start making shoes, and another one decided they were going to start building boats, and they wanted to trade with each other, but there weren't any markets. So thankfully, we all figured out how to trade with one another, and then we created capitalism.
It sounds funny when you...
I know, it's absurd, right? It's just, that's what they teach you in Economics 101. The central thing that makes capitalism is not markets, it's capital. And what is capital? It's basically your control over the means of production. So the stuff we need to produce everything. That was land initially. And the enclosures were a process whereby previously common land that was used to kind of graze cattle amongst villages and was kind of held collectively was enclosed into private patches. And it meant that people who had previously relied upon subsistence to be able to survive were no longer able to rely on subsistence to be able to survive. At the same time, you had the rise of industrialization. So you had big industrialists who needed workers, but workers were not willing to leave their places where, life was extremely hard, but they were rooted in their communities, and they weren't willing to kind of give all that up to go and work for an extremely meager wage and also a highly significant chance of death or injury. So what happened was they were forced off the land. The whole idea of primitive accumulation, of enclosure, was to create a landless class of peasants who had no choice other than to sell their labor power in order to survive. And you see this process continuing all around the world today. When they tie your healthcare to your job, or when it becomes impossible to buy a house without an extremely large salary, when it becomes even impossible to rent without an extremely large salary, you end up in this position where you are faced with this choice of work or die, work or be out on the streets. And that isn't a process that's happened naturally. It is a process that has been guided and directed by people who wanted to exploit human labor and use it to augment their profits.